Well, good evening, patriots and freedom fighters throughout Saskatchewan, across the country, and around the world. Welcome to the show. It's been a couple of days, which is good for me because I needed to just gather myself. Frustrations, of course, are mounting for a lot of people. But I don't know about you folks, but I'm starting to get the sense that more and more people are finally waking up. More and more people are getting into the fight. More and more people are standing up for their rights. It's happening, and it's none too soon. We have restaurant owners in Alberta that are saying, "The hell with you. This is our livelihood, and you are not going to destroy it, Mr. Kenny." Um, Speaking of Mr. Kenny, he's taken another shot at conspiracy theorists. I'm going to actually go through that later tonight after my discussion with Vince Gircys. Our retired OPP officer is going to join us here in about 10 minutes. But yeah, Kenny took another shot at trying to explain away the Great Reset, so I'm going to go through a little bit of that. But good on the folks of Alberta standing up for their rights, standing up for their ability and freedom to earn a living and run a small business. Good for you. In Ontario, on February 11th, business owners there are going to give the big fat middle finger to Rob Ford, and they're going to open their businesses. And I sure hope lots of them do, because it's only together and it's only through a unified front that we're going to win this battle. So hopefully there's lots of folks that in Ontario that steal up and really, I mean, it shouldn't be a hard decision. You're either going to go out of business or you're going to stand up for your business. And again, if lots of businesses are doing it, you have the power. We watched Kenny forced into that situation in Alberta, and he may not have liked it, and he was sure pretty angry. But at the end of the day, they had to move up their plan. So the people win, and when the people stand together, the people win. And when people stand together, we take back our country, we take back our freedoms that the government has no business taking from us. So those are a couple of good things. We had another two people out of a hotel, the Westin Hotel, I think in Calgary. Misty Wind and her crew did a phenomenal job of breaking out two people who were kept against their will, and it was through them and their courage that they encouraged these people to walk out of that thing. You don't have to be there. They have no right to put you there. And success. So kudos to Misty Wind and the folks over there. Awesome. Love it. It almost brings tears to my eyes when I see that, when I see people, right is right. And you just defend what's right, regardless of the hokey consequences that the government is threatening you with. Just do what's right. Just do what's in your heart. Do what you know to be right, and eventually we will win. So lots of good things happening. I love it. Yeah, and the Calgary police just stood around, absolutely, as they should. They have nothing to do. You can't. It's against the law to confine somebody without a warrant, without a reason. It's insanity. And there's a lot of protesters in the hotel, the Radisson. I'm not sure what city in Ontario that's in offhand, but they're doing the same thing. I love it. Keep it up. You're phenomenal. So things are happening, and it's really encouraging to see. In Saskatchewan, we're planning a huge convoy in Saskatoon. So for those of you tuning in Saskatoon and area, Regina, wherever, come and be with us. Come and be part of something special. And in this case, you don't have an excuse that it's too cold. You don't have an excuse that you can't socially distance. You can't have an excuse about masks or any of that. It's a convoy. So all you have to do is drive to SaskTel Center for 1 o'clock on Saturday and meet us there and join the convoy. So just on that, I've got a little piece of technology lent to me by one of my buddies that's going to allow me to transmit through an FM station. And so that should be interesting. It'll be 99.3 will be the station. And then we can have our message coming along with us on the convoy. So that'll be fun. But that's all you got to do is put some flags or a sign on your trunk or on the back of your truck or whatever, and dress it up a little bit, make it fun. Convoy for kids, hashtag convoy for kids, 99.3. Yeah, so just be there. If you have concerns about the measures the government has taken, if you have concerns about them justifying all these measures based on a bogus PCR test, if you're concerned about your business, if you're concerned about your kids and their sports and their social activities and their health, if you're concerned about the elderly and the fact that the government hasn't approved the use of hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, meanwhile they're sitting locked up by themselves alone and literally dying. If those things concern you, then join us and start demanding that the government justify these actions. And they can't. They haven't done it yet, and they won't be able to. There's too much evidence suggesting otherwise. So be part of it. Be part of something special. Again, Saturday, 1 o'clock, SaskTel Center, just the parking lot. I had the SaskTel Center call me today. They were concerned that we were holding an event there, and I made it clear that we are not holding an event there. We are simply using the parking lot as a meeting place so we can take off from there. So we won't be there long. Be there by 1 o'clock, and we'll hit the road and go from there. At 3 o'clock, we'll be meeting at Vimy Memorial for some speeches and bringing everybody together. Again, if you for some reason are manipulated by the media and somewhat scared of this thing, you're welcome to wear a mask. Maybe you still have some other concerns. You're welcome to do that, as well as socially distance if that's what you think is the best thing for you to do. But that's where we'll meet, 3 o'clock, and we need this to be big. We need to send a strong message to our government over what they're doing. I put out a Facebook message earlier today, basically stating that, we're not as bad off in Saskatchewan as other provinces, even Alberta or Manitoba, especially Ontario. I think we're very similar with what's happening in BC. That doesn't mean we're letting off Scott Moe and Dr. Shahab and the Saskatchewan government off the hook. We most definitely are not. But at the same time, we have to recognize that each province has its different issues. Each province has its different regulations and restrictions. So, everybody's different. Every province is different, and we have to tackle each province based on what we're facing. So, I just wanted to mention that really quickly. Vancouver, BC is chill. Yeah. 1 o'clock. Yes, 1 o'clock for the convoy, Madge, and 3 o'clock for the speeches at Vimy Memorial. So 1 o'clock at Sastel Center, 3 o'clock for the speeches at Vimy after the convoy. Yeah, it's time for the police to realize that following orders they know are against the oath they took just to save the pension. They won't have a pension if the Liberal Party of the CCP get their way. Yeah, well, that's just it. And I wanted to bring something up, so I entitled this stream "The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly," because there's lots of good, but there's also some bad, and there's also some real ugly. And I just wanted to show you one piece of the ugly. I just came across this just before I came live, so I want to have a look at this with you folks. It's pretty disgusting, to be quite honest. This kid was, and I don't know much of the backstory, so we have to leave some room there, but from what I understand was simply skateboarding. I don't know if he mouthed something before. I don't know. Not to say that any of that justifies what we're about to see, but it ain't pretty. Hang on. Oh yeah, we're at it again here, I guess.
All Craig's been asked to talk to. Please. Okay, sweetie. You can please don't. Why?
Notice CBC is there helping. That's a CBC jacket, by the way.
Put your hand behind your fucking back. I'll be behind you. Want this? No, sir, let it go, please.
How old are you, man? Yo, how old are you? How old are you?
20.
You're 20? Just do what he says, man. You can't put your hand behind your head? What are you doing, man? What the fuck? Don't hurt him. Dude, he's using excessive force. I got it all. This Why? I got it all. Just please don't touch me. It's okay, I know. This is excessive, man. You can say whatever, but I just got it all on tape, man. Like, that's extreme. He's a kid, he's 20. He was... skateboarding, dude. Like,
you want to go in? Get up back. Yeah.
Somebody get myself, please.
Yeah, get another name.
Somebody get myself, please.
Fucking psycho.
So, again, I don't want to say that I mean, everybody knows that I'm have some time as a peace officer, as a corrections officer in prison. Things got rough quite often, quite frequently. But what I'm seeing there is an officer that is, I don't think he's fit for duty, quite honestly. I think it's disgusting what we just witnessed. He's obviously, a lot of his actions were emotional. They were out of anger, it seemed. as you could tell in the video. And that's not making an excuse. I'm just saying that this was, he needs some time off is what I would suggest. And we're seeing more and more of this across the country. Of course, we saw what happened in Calgary. We saw what happened in Ontario, and other places. And we're starting to see more of it. And I think a lot of it has to do with, and again, I'm not making excuses, but I think we're seeing a lot of police officers frustrated and having to do a job they didn't sign up to do. And pressure from the inside, pressure from the people they work with, pressure from their bosses. And we're starting to see that manifest. And it's getting ugly, and it's not fun to watch. We're going to talk a little bit about that here with my next guest. Our good friend Vince Gircys is going to join us. But I wanted to mention, just in relation to the police, I got an email from an RCMP officer today, and I can't get into details because it's not my place, but the email that I got was information that these officers are going to be working with the commissioner, or maybe the chair of the police commission, to start acting on some of the complaints that members are putting in on fellow members, taking things too far, arresting people for no good reason, and putting them and detaining them for days on end, with no warrant, with no reason. So there is division in the ranks, it seems. And I think that's probably pretty common with every police force. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more with my next guest, who I'm going to bring in now. Good friend of the show, good friend of mine. Vince, how are you, my friend?
Very good. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks for joining. I'm glad we could make it work. We were supposed to have you on, I think it was last week, but things got mixed up. My fault. So we'll make it up today.
Okay. Well, before I start, let me make sure that I express from the concerns of some, the views, opinions, and ideas that I do express are exclusively my own and in no way represent any previous or current group that I would have been with, that is group, previous employer, or organization. And I think after 32 years of being with the police service, and now that I'm free from that, I love to express my own views. I have no intention of expressing anyone else's views. So this is me speaking, not anybody else.
Very good. I completely understand your disclaimer. I get it. So what's going on over there, Vince? What you been up to here lately? Life has been fairly interesting from what I understand.
What's not going on over here is the question. What's not going on? Yes, things are progressing at a very alarming rate here in Ontario and everywhere else across the province. But thank goodness I do not live in the province of Quebec. I feel sorry. My heart goes out for the people in Quebec. I think they have it the worst by some of the laws that I see and some of the things I see going on there. So there are some good things that have happened since I was last on your show. We had a lockdown that was initiated close to 3 weeks ago now, the beginning of January. And that's not good news. But the good news was that there was an announcement made at the onset of the lockdowns, and that was made by the Ontario Chiefs of Police. It was a press release that had gone out the morning of the initiation of the lockdown. And it's very commendable that the Ontario Chiefs of Police have finally gotten together and on the announcement of the lockdowns made a statement that essentially said, we have no authority to pull over your car as a result of these lockdowns to check, and we are not going to do that for that specific reason. We have no authority to stop you if you're walking down the street at any time to question your motive or reason for walking. We don't have the authority to do that, and we will not be entering your homes. We don't have the authority to do that. So that really put Ontarians at ease as a result of that statement. And for the most part, the police have been sticking to that statement. There are other times when you can get stopped. You'll be getting stopped on ride checks in the evening, and then the police will stop you to see if you've had any alcohol to drink. And then I know of specific examples when then they throw out the question of, do you realize you can be charged with an $800 fine if what you're doing is not essential? And can you explain, why you think what you're doing is essential? So this is happening. But, for the most part during the day, things are pretty good, with the exception of protest groups in Toronto and what you're seeing on the media that's happening there. That's very unfortunate. But I will say that, my heart goes out to the men and women of law enforcement out there, my former brothers and sisters in law enforcement. There are many members out there that are adhering to their oath and to the Charter of Rights. And, maybe at some point in the beginning, before we go too far, I can go through the number of layers of the onion that they still adhere to. And they are our heroes right now at this point. And you won't hear their names, and they're in the background doing the work that they're supposed to do. And they're not getting the pat on the back that they really deserve. And they deserve much more than that. They are the line between tyranny and where we are right now.
Absolutely they are.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely they are. And I have, of course, friends in different forces, and I speak to them fairly regularly, and they don't agree with what they're seeing in these cases that we're seeing, and they do want to hold on to their oath that they've made, and they do care deeply about the oath that they gave. So, and you're right, and those ones never get recognized. Those ones never get talked about because we don't see them, and we don't see them because they're respecting their oath, right? So Vince, you're fairly involved with, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're fairly involved with Stand on Guard or Police on Guard. Is that what it is? Is that the organization?
Well, there is a group called Police on Guard for Thee. I was the first posting member to sign up on December 24th. Would you say I'm fairly involved? I would not say that at this point. I'm a member that has signed on with that group, but I'm not anything at this point beyond a signed on member. Okay. I've been quite vocal and moving in a direction of strategizing in my own regard. So that group has its agenda as it plays out, and I have my own agenda as it plays out. So I essentially represent myself and come out here, and I'll come on your show and speak to other individuals. But I can't really, as I said at the beginning, I can't speak on behalf of that group.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. So there's so much going on. I'm not sure where to start, but I want to get your opinion on these quarantines now, where people are being scooped at an airport, and in some cases by people that haven't identified themselves, and thrown into a van and driven to some undisclosed location, and loved ones that are there to pick them up or whatever aren't told anything. What is this North Korea? Like, are we in North Korea now?
Yeah, you might think so, wouldn't you? Yeah,
it's crazy, Vince.
Yeah, I can't speak in large volume to all the details and issues surrounding that, because it seems that it's happening very quickly, and then there are a few phone calls made, but there doesn't ever seem to be anybody right there at the airport filming this and getting the lowdown on what exactly is really happening in a live feed as it happens. So there's a lot of speculation surrounding that, but I think the information coming out is not good, and clearly indicative of some kind of charter rights there. I mean, I don't think we're surprised that we see more charter right violations, because they're just they come about more frequently on a daily basis. So it's almost to the point where it's not surprising anymore. And it should be surprising, and it should be concerning for sure. It seems to be a new tactic by some division of the government or somebody authorized by some division of the government.
Yeah, it's definitely top down. I just, you know, I guess I maybe I'm naive even after, you know, almost 50 years of living on this earth, that I would think that most people in that position wouldn't want to do that. They wouldn't want to round people up at an airport, throw them in a van, and drive them to an undisclosed location. You know, maybe I'm a little naive, but and we're seeing it in different parts. You know, even people that work for stores. There's some people that seem to like this this authority all of a sudden that they're given. So I don't know if that's what's happening, but I just know myself, and I know if I was asked to do that, I would refuse. I would say absolutely not. I'm not doing it. Right?
Yeah, I would do the same thing. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you know, it's really it's disheartening, all of this, and it's shining a big light on I think some bigger issues we have in society. Maybe
it is, and clearly the scope of the social project that we're seeing here, the social experiment that we're seeing, really shows you the either lack of courage of most individuals or the vulnerability of most individuals within the country who either, and then the lack of awareness. So first it starts off with a lot of people just aren't familiar with the scope of what's really going on and what's piggybacking onto the COVID narrative. Then there's people who choose not to speak out. And then there are people who just don't have the courage to say no to some authoritative figure at an airport as you're getting off a plane when they're telling you this is what you have to do, right?
Yeah, you're right. And that, you know, there's a lot of people in that situation in the reverse that really have no idea how to respond to that and or even the personality to respond to it effectively. And we've seen that today in the video I watched where there's two people locked up in a hotel, and it took the people that were all there supporting them to encourage them to leave. You're not in jail. You can leave. You're a free person.
Yeah.
You know, and so they did, and good on them for doing that. But so it, you know, everyone's different, I guess, and everyone handles these things different. It's just when I look at it, I try to look at it the way I would see it. And you're right. I mean, I would just say, absolutely not. What are you doing? You're not taking me anywhere. I mean, especially if they didn't identify themselves, Vince, the fight would be on.
Well, we say that, but you know, as individuals who have mask exemptions, and we're fairly large people, you know, whether it's our height or our stature is fairly large, we may behave a little bit differently when we walk into the grocery store than our wives would or other members of the public would. And, you know, when you're walking in with your stature, sometimes that's very beneficial for people who say that grizzly patriot guy. Yeah, I'm not gonna question him. I'm not gonna go near that guy. But a lot of people don't have a problem in now creating their own laws within the sphere of their influence. And also there's abuse of that authority. There's abuse of authority across the spectrum everywhere.
Yeah. Right.
And that's what we're seeing. Yeah.
Yeah, there is. And it's interesting you say that, because I have two quick little stories that I'll tell in regards to that. So I go to the co-op is generally where I shop for groceries, and there's a security guard there. Every time he sees me, he turns around and sort of just looks around as I walk by, and I smile. And I mean, we all know what's going on, so it's kind of funny. But then yesterday I walked into Shoppers Drug Mart. I had to pick up a prescription, and I have this coat that has a really high front to it. It's a winter wool thing, and it has a real high front. So, you know, if anybody gives me stress, I just sort of pull that up to a certain level and I just carry on. And that's usually more than enough. So I walked up to get my prescription, and the lady behind the counter says, "You're not wearing a mask." And I said, "Well, but I have this, and it's probably better than your mask." And her response was weird. It was, "Well, I have to wear a mask all day when I work." And it's like, but what does that have to do with me and what I'm doing? It's this, it's this idea that, okay, because you're in the position that you have to wear that thing all day, somehow I have to do it now. It's
Well, I
this.
have a bit of a different response to that. I'm usually, oh, you are so lucky. I wish I could wear a mask if it wasn't for my exemption, because
Yeah,
I can't. But I'm so envious of you being able to wear that mask. I really wish I could, but I can't.
yeah.
I'm
I just think it's fun. I think people are really funny, and I try to have a little fun with it too. As I'm walking through the grocery store or whatever, people are looking at me, and I'm smiling and whistling, and I'm just going about my business, and it's generally pretty good.
Yeah, I find given that we're talking about that subject right now, I find it's
Yeah,
very important to always approach individuals with an open mind, not to be too defensive. You know that something's coming possibly, but I always think I'm probably going to get questioned on that issue because of my exemption, but I'm going to hear them out because it may not be a violent confrontation. And it's so far, with the exception of one or two people over the last 8 months, it hasn't been. It's more questioning the narrative of why. And then we end up having a very good conversation, and I end up informing the people of the exemptions and certain other issues. And it's a positive experience.
right.
I had a case where I came back from a public speaking engagement in Toronto, in downtown Toronto, and I was on my way home. And on my way home, I stopped in at a local grocery store, and I had to pick up some groceries. And as I'm checking out, I can see two of the cashiers coming towards me. And I'm thinking, oh, here it goes. Here it goes. Here it comes. And they walk over to me and they said, are you the guy that I just saw in a video the last 2 days on YouTube? And I said, yeah, probably. And then they just gave me a big hug. And they said, wow, we're so happy to have you in the store. And they recognized me, and they said, yeah, I told you it was that guy. So, sometimes you're anticipating a negative response, and you end up getting a positive response. So
You're absolutely right. I had one more experience where my son had to go to the license issuer to get his driver's license worked out, and he went in, didn't have a mask, came back out, asked me if I had one. I gave him something that he could wear. He went back in, didn't get the results he wanted because of some issue. Blah blah blah. Long story short, I ended up having to go in, and as I walked in, of course, I have this little thing that I have on my jacket. Didn't say anything about that, but then this young kid, and I still feel bad for him. This young kid, he's probably about early 20s. Sir, can you wash your hands at the thing there? And you know what? I instantly saw red, and I snapped at him. I didn't yell at him. I just snapped. I said, "My hands are clean. I'm not doing it." And it was just in this immediate knee-jerk reaction to this. What is this 20-year-old telling me to wash my hands for? And so he got a bit of a blast, and then he was really nervous and shaking after that. And I still feel bad for the kid because it's not his fault. He's just doing what he's told, and he doesn't know any better. But it's so I have to be conscious of that, and I have discussions with friends all the time in this regard. That I really, is this the day that I'm going to go to jail because I'm doing something that some store clerk thinks I shouldn't be doing? So you really have to get in that frame of mind, as you said, that engage with people and talk to people. It'll be much easier that way. It's just the frustration level is high. Hey.
of course, and I've had the similar situation happen several times with a hand cleaner as well. And my common response to that is, and it's kind of a one long diatribe, and it's just, you know what? There isn't a single law in Canada or in Ontario or in Toronto that says that I have to put hand sanitizer on my hands. And it's just not going to happen. So let's move on. I want those pastries. I want them in a bag, and I want them now. Come on, let's get going. And that's what I do. And it works every time. And then in one particular case, I said that, and there was only one other customer in the store with his two sons. And he immediately looks at me and he says, wow, That's my kind of guy. And I didn't know what he meant by that until I got out of the store. And he said, I don't know how you did that. How did you do that? That's amazing. And I said, how did I do what? And
Right.
he mentioned the hand sanitizer. And I said, there's no law that makes you have to put on the hand sanitizer.
Right.
So, I don't know why you think there is. And then I explained to him the mask exemption clause, which they weren't aware of. And before you know it, they ripped their masks off, threw them in the garbage, and said, that's it. I'm done with these masks. I can't stand wearing them. They're causing me difficulty. And I said, well, if they cause you difficulty, you don't have to wear them. So, exactly.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to cover.
Yeah,
sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead. I was just going to lead you into the next one.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to cover is there's multiple layers to the onion of, I hear a lot of people say, we don't have our rights in Canada anymore. Our rights have all been taken away. And that's not true. That's not true. I don't know if you've ever worn contact lenses or dealt with something really small and you're trying to put a little screw in something with the screwdriver and you drop it on the ground. Well, you haven't lost it. It's still there. You just can't find it for the time being, but it hasn't gone away. And likewise, with our rights, it definitely appears on a regular basis that we've lost them. But we haven't lost them. They're just being grossly abused on a frequent basis all across the country. And so the history of where these all come from, without starting back 800 years ago at the time of the Magna Carta. But if we were to go back to 1946, following the Second World War and following the trials at Nuremberg and all the war crimes and the crimes against humanity following that court proceeding, there was an international declaration called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And almost all the countries in all the Western countries of the world and most countries of the world signed on to that declaration, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And that's coming right from the UN. And it still exists to this day, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So we have that as a layer of the onion. And following that, in Canada, then we have the Canadian Charter of Rights. And the Canadian Charter of Rights incorporates the rights from the Universal Declaration of Rights, which is global. And then from the Canadian Charter of Rights, we have in Ontario, we have the Emergency Measures Act. And the Emergency Measures Act says right in it that everything in the Emergency Measures Act in Ontario says it's pursuant to the Canadian Charter of Rights.
Right.
And then from that, we have the Police Services Act. And the Police Services Act clearly identifies that it's pursuant to the Canadian Charter of Rights. And then there's an officer's oath. And the officer's oath in Ontario is, to protect the Constitution of Canada, which incorporates the Canadian Charter of Rights. So we have so many layers of protection in our rights. And in my previous profession, in the 32 years that I spent there, those rights, if they were ever violated, either grossly or slightly, there were very severe consequences from the courts. And I still to this day put in a tremendous amount of trust in our judicial process in the courts. So we just seem to not have got to that stage yet where the courts are making the decision. But I'm very, very confident that our courts uphold very strongly in this country. Our courts uphold the necessity, not only the necessity, the recognition that it's our foundational principle. And they uphold those rights and are very stern when it comes to any violation of those rights. So I see a bright future playing out for anybody who had a charge on any of these issues. I just don't see the possibility for convictions.
I agree 100%, Vince. And I think it's important that, there's a lot of people that are scared of these fines and scared of these arrests that they're seeing. And rightfully so. I mean, nobody wants to see the police taking these actions, and they're scared now, which is really, really sucks that people are now scared of the police. Because, you know, for so many years, me growing up, we respected the police. We respected and understood, at least, you know, in my house, we understood the job they had. And so it's sad to see that. But people need to be empowered by that charter, by that international agreement on human rights, and exercise their rights. And they should be empowered. And just to expand a little bit on the charter, I mean, it's very clear in the charter that when the government enacts an emergency act, that the measures that they plan to take, you know, have to be in line with the charter and the Constitution, limited only by demonstrably proving that these actions and these measures are appropriate and reasonable for the circumstance. And I mean, we're saying they're not, and the government has never proven these. This is the thing. And so I think you're going to see, and we're already seeing in Saskatchewan, there was I can't remember exactly how many, maybe 15 or 20 charges issued in relation to the measures, and 10 of them have been withdrawn to this point. And I haven't been notified that my 4 have been withdrawn, but I'm assuming they're not going to see the light of day in court, would be my guess, in relation to these, you know, exercising my right to assemble, exercising my right to free expression, these sorts of things. And I think the government knows that, and I think they went into it knowing that. And I think these directives to the police were done, you know, consciously to establish this fear in the population that we wouldn't be protesting and gathering and doing these things. And they don't care if it's, you know, they issue these tickets just to instill the fear. That's how I read it.
Yeah, very much. One thing that I'm a little shocked by is now this is going back to the years that I was still employed in the policing profession, is that I never worked with anybody who wasn't very aware and familiar with the importance of having trust with our partners in the community, and just how important trust is. I mean, trust is important in every facet of life. You have to have trust between yourself and your dog. You have to have trust with your family members, your spouse. It's the fundamental principle that you're just not going to have a working relationship if trust isn't there with anybody. And I say that if people are having some mental difficulty right now, where they're having a hard time coping with these issues, and I always stress to people that, you know, doing your mental exercise and staying sharp and focused psychologically through this is so important. And one of the best things you can do to prepare for what's coming and what we're dealing with now is having relationships with family and friends. If you need to mend some relationships, then mend them. But the best tool that you can have in your toolbox right now is your closest ally, your closest friend, and your closest relations. So, and that only happens through trust. So it's not going to help you to have a large number of people on your side. It's going to help you to have people, it could be a small number, but people that you trust. It's not the quality, it's not the quantity, it's the quality. Right. So trust is number one in that issue. So in policing, you know, I saw that at Adamson's barbecue when the hammer came down there. I just saw trust was broken right there. And from there, it just rolled downhill very quickly.
Yeah. So I just noticed in the chat there, somebody was saying that one of the restaurants in Alberta wasn't supported by the courts. And maybe you can help me after I just say what I wanted to say. So when it comes to businesses are a little bit different. It's the fines are issued to the business, not the individual. And correct me if I'm wrong, Vince, but businesses are not covered under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms as an individual is. So I think if there's a ruling against these restaurants by the courts, I'm guessing that's where that's coming. What's your perspective, Vince?
You'd really have to dig into case law and charter rulings on case law issues that are before the courts or that have come before the courts, and that's not my area of expertise, so I really shouldn't comment on that. I just know it how I've seen it from my perspective in courts under charges that I have laid or my colleagues have laid, and how they pan out and how the courts deal with that. But from a business perspective, that's a different issue that I'm not familiar with. So,
yeah, and it's, I mean, neither of us are lawyers, or judges. But yeah, I think there is some sort of a distinction that's made between a business and an individual when it comes to the charter. So but again, we're not lawyers, but it's, again, for example, the whistle stop in Alberta, I'm just reading the chat. I'd like to see that the businesses are and there's a number of them that are standing up to these. But, at the end of the day, these decisions have to be made with eyes wide open that, okay, so is your business going to fail? And are you going bankrupt if you don't open? Then what do you have no choice. You're going to open. And that's the situation a lot of these restaurants are in, and probably why they're doing it. Understanding that a fine and a court date is probably in your future as well. And so you have to go in with open eyes. And really, you might want to talk to a lawyer, and you might want to talk to somebody to see how you may be treated as how the business might be treated or seen in the eyes of the court before you do it.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and that's one that I've just made a note on that I'm going to look into that issue myself, because I'm sure you're not going to be the only one asking that question. I find that as things are changing, of course, day by day, week by week, it seems that with the protests that were happening in Toronto, the charges that are being laid now are like common mischief charges under the criminal code for the protesters. So where they were being charged before under the Reopening Act, now the charge is shifting to a criminal code violation.
Yeah, I actually got a message from JCCF out of Calgary that they've hired some criminal lawyers because some of these are moving into that realm. Again, I imagine it's a lot of it is to instill fear in people.
Exactly, but the defense is going to be exactly the same. What
Right.
you're doing is you're either just standing there peacefully or you're protesting peacefully, whatever the person wants to call it. But if it's being labeled as a common mischief, now I see some tactical advantage to the police by going that way. I don't agree with it. I mean, the charge is not appropriate. It really
Right.
doesn't apply. And again, I see that being another charter violation going out the window with a set of wings on it. But the advantage is you do it once and it's common mischief, and here's your release. You do it the next day and it's common mischief, you're going to be released a different way. And there's conditions attached. You do it a third time and it's, 3 times in 2 weeks, breaching your release conditions, you could be now detained until your court date, or now it becomes a $5,000 bail. This is the tactic, the escalation of the conditions of the release, and that's the difference between doing it provincially under the Reopening Act and going criminal code. They just put tighter restrictions on you.
Right. Well, there's a couple individuals out of Moncton that I had on the show here a few days ago that they were arrested, and they were simply exercising their right to assemble on a public sidewalk, and they were arrested, handcuffed, and they spent 3 days in jail in solitary confinement, and released after the third day, and they're not going to go back to the protest because they were really traumatized by that action. So people are gonna have to make some decisions on how important freedom is, and how important the fight is, and how creative you want to get at participating. But I can feel for those folks who aren't criminals. They haven't been in the system. They don't understand the system. They've never been inside a jail, immediately put into jail and into solitary confinement. That must have been a terrible experience.
It is, but I mean, there are consequences to everybody's actions, and going down that path, there are consequences to those types of police actions. You may get away with it now, but down the road, there are always consequences. And my concern is if this situation continues to develop and continues to get worse, if our society can't come to some type of understanding or resolution between the police and the public that police have sworn to protect, I see this growing. I see protests growing, and I see more and more Canadians becoming more angry and upset with this. Now imagine this continuing. Imagine charges continuing. Imagine protests continuing. Imagine us going down this path. The potential down the road, when the dust settles, for every individual who has had their rights violated now filing rights violations. I can tell you under in Ontario, under the Ontario Human Rights Act, with people that file human rights violations, the fines are extremely high. Now, imagine the thousands and thousands and thousands of charges when the dust settles on this. If individuals then start to file human rights violations, the last time we saw anything close, and it wasn't close, but something similar to this would have been at the G20 summit. And the G20 summit just quietly paid out. There was a payout just back in August, I believe, of last year. Settlement, and it was, I think, $12.5 million was the class action lawsuit settlement. Well, the numbers of charges laid and the numbers of people involved is much smaller coming from the G20 summit. And in most cases, I would say there was video footage supporting their class action lawsuit, but you really didn't get specific officers' identification or, weren't able to identify specific members. But in this case, you have a ticket associated to every individual, every contact. So you have very specific officers involved who are doing this. And I'd hate to think of what would happen down the road with civil litigations and the backlash, because every police department has an association, and their association have legal funds. I don't think their legal funds are set up for this type of response. They understand you're going to have a few people who might have done something that year, and the fund's going to cover them. This is the way the funds are designed to work. So on a scale like this, especially if it escalates, are there legal funds capable of supporting that? And what that can translate to is putting associations, they'll go bankrupt from just a loss of funds trying to defend these individuals. And then what happens when they go bankrupt, or they've just run out of funds? Well, then they'll just say to the officers, "That's it. Our funds depleted. We don't have any more money to defend you. Any charges that come in against members now, we don't have the money. You're just going to have to defend yourself.
You're on your own." Yep.
Yeah, and for smaller towns, if the township or the city says, "Okay, well, we'll kick in and we'll help you out," I can't see them doing that, because if they do that, if they say to the police, "Look, you have your own association, you have your own legal funds. If we're going to support you, then we'll have to support the shopkeepers and we'll have to support everybody." So I don't see that happening. And even if they did, you can bankrupt the town with that many suits. And some towns are quite good about this. We're not seeing enforcement. Where I live, our town's very good. They're not taking any enforcement action. It's warnings at this point. But in other towns, like a small town in Ontario called Elmer. There's issues there with the local church, and there's a lot of charges that are flying on a weekly basis. How's that going to pan out a year from now or 2 years from now when the dust settles? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there as how things can pan out in the future.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of that, as you say, once the dust clears and dust settles. That's why I think in a lot of cases, these fines that people are getting are just going to be withdrawn before they go to court. But it's interesting because one of the things I considered, because I think a lot of these fines in these cases are going to be thrown out, what worries me, and you can speak to this, but what worries me is, so right now, as we talked about before, we have the charter, and there is a standard that has to be met by the government. Again, I'll mention it, demonstratively proving that the measures are appropriate for the circumstance. And there's the Oakes test that is used to determine these things. And if the provinces, like if this thing is extended, let's say we go to COVID-21, as you know, it looks like they're starting to lay tracks on. If it goes in that direction, this goes on for an extended period of time. My fear is that the government in each province will pull the notwithstanding clause. In that case, they're not subject to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Now, of course, they're still subject to human rights. And that plays a huge role in this. And so that's kind of where my end game was, is ultimately you have human rights that have been agreed to. And if they're in violation of that, we can deal with that. But in the interim, there is still that, that consideration. And it scares me to death that, that we're heading in that direction.
I'm not worried about it. And I'll tell you why. You'll be able to sleep better at night tonight after I explain this. Okay, follow me along here. So in the first 3 to 6 months of this ramp up, let's go back to January, February of last year. In the first 3 to 6 months, when we really didn't know what was going on, we didn't know what we were dealing with. We were all trying to play along in the game of, let's flatten the curve and let's see what it is we're dealing with. How bad is this going to get? There were so many unknowns. That could have been a time for the government to invoke the notwithstanding clause and say, we're gonna have to cancel some of your rights, and here's why. And I don't think there would have been much pushback on that at that point. But when we finally get to September, October, we've had about 8 months or so to 7 or 8 months to analyze the data, and there's a lot of new information coming out. We know a lot about hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin. We understand how faulty the PCR tests are. We see the game that's being played with cases and case counts, and we have a good look at the total mortality rate already at that point. And you're waking up and saying, wait a minute, this isn't what we thought it was. We could see that the death rate is similar to what it was before. We start to find out all kinds of manipulations with the media and the one-sided narrative. And a lot of people are starting to wake up going, okay, we see what's going on here. So all of that information, all of that data, it's all on file. It's all, a lot of it comes right from the government databases. And so you have you have 1 year of really good working data now. So for the government to try to invoke that, the challenge behind it is so strong to say, wait a minute, now that you have a year worth of data, take a look. You no longer have the support, the data to support the narrative that you're trying to claim exists.
Well,
so,
and part of that, in the bigger scheme of things, is politicians generally will not admit to wrongdoing, especially on a grand scale that they would be admitting to it now, with all of the information that a lot of us have been saying for a long time, but it's starting to become more and more common knowledge. So there is that, element that, okay, so the government is they're caught now, but they're going to find a way to wiggle themselves out of this slowly. And maybe that's going to happen, but I'm not convinced that that's going to happen. And if it doesn't, and again, we're hit with this, this new variant, and already, I mean, contradictions to that are being put out. But so I'm not sure I'm going to rest fully tonight, Vince, but I understand what you're saying. And
the glass is half full.
It is a good point. Yeah, for sure.
And I'm going to say it, the emperor has no clothes. Yeah, and I think more and more people see that the emperor has no clothes. And if you don't believe it, anybody who doesn't believe it, just ask them to read the label for the contents. There's no label. The data is not there. The data is not there. And when this gets into a courtroom, the courtroom wants to see data. You can say all you want about your opinions. The court's not listening to your opinions. The court's looking at hard data and factual information, and a lot of that data is coming from it's coming from multiple sources. But they want to see, they want to hear experts on the matter. They want to see raw data, and the best data that you can use is government data right now. You're going to say, here's total mortality rate, here's case rates or a case mortality rate. Here's the accuracy of the PCR test. One thing that concerns me is the lies and manipulation on cycle rates of the PCR testing. So you really have to squeeze the orange really hard to get the juice out to figure out, hey, that test that I'm supposed to be taking, what's the cycle rate? And our hospital's recording the cycle rate. I know that facilities know what their cycle rate is, but that data better be recorded, because as you're starting to see, cases are starting to come down now. Yeah, cases are coming down. Is that because you're dropping the cycle rate on the PCR test? And then you're going to try to say that these vaccines that are being issued equate to lower case counts. And, so therefore we should have everybody vaccinated because it'll make the numbers go down. And it'll have nothing to do with the vaccination. It'll have everything to do with reducing the cycle rate on the machine. Yeah. This is hocus pocus.
Right.
But that'll all come out.
I spoke to that last week. It's interesting when the World Health Organization finally comes out with this notice on PCR and the likelihood of a false positive, the higher CT value. We all knew this, and so did they. Right. And that's the thing, is this isn't new science to them. This isn't something that's evolved for them. They knew this. Why did they come out with it on January 20th, an hour after Biden was inaugurated? And then you watch like states like North Dakota, who on the 20th of January had 12,000 cases, and 10 days later they have 1,000 cases. So did they take that WHO notice and apply it to the tests? And all of a sudden, lo and behold, look at that, we're down to 1,000, right? So, I mean, these things will come out, and it's, I mean, this whole thing in politics, it's a perception game. It has, very little to do with reality, especially when you get into the media. So that's where I'm hopeful, and that's where in all of this discussion and all of this debate that we have, sooner or later, it's going to be a debate in a courtroom, and we're going to win. And
that's right.
And the politicians will hopefully at that point be held to account. We can only hope.
Well, in my summation, when I talk about, when people ask me what I see as a way forward, there's a couple issues, and that issue about the politicians comes right into it. So the first thing I see as a repair to a way forward is exposing legacy media propaganda. That would kind of straighten people out. But of course, that would be the hardest job, because they don't want people to know. It's better to keep people dumbed down and stupid and watching all the scare tactics and the fear. But the second, and I think by far the most important thing for our country, is some kind of a shift in policy that finally, for once and for all, can make politicians accountable. We have no accountability It's seemingly at the provincial level or at the federal level. And that is a huge, huge component. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and in this case, the whole COVID thing, I mean, you have conservative, quote unquote, conservative governments, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario. They don't have any opposition because all of their opposition is on board and want them to do more. So there is no opposition. We are the opposition.
Right.
There's no opposition in the media. So we're it. And this is where I get a lot of my inspiration and frankly my boldness, because we are it. We're the opposition, and we have to be, and we have to scream, and we have to bust through. Of course, everyone tries to make you feel bad, and they try to shame you and ridicule you and all these things. Bring it, because if I'm encouraging and inspiring you to come after me, then I'm doing something right. Then my opposition is working, and so is everybody else's. So let's just keep at it and keep screaming, and sooner or later, our number is growing. Their number is not growing, right? In level of support.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, for those people that want to remain neutral, both in the public or in politics, there's an old saying: if you remain neutral in situations of injustice, you've chosen the side of the oppressor. And the other saying I like from Edmund Burke, an old one that's 150 years older, is all that it's required for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing.
Yeah.
And those two quotes work hand in hand.
Absolutely. 100%.
Or we could use George Bush's quote: you're either with us or you're with the enemy.
Yeah, I like the other two better. You know what, Vince? We're at that hour point. We're actually over an hour. I've had you. I greatly appreciate you coming on and giving us your perspective on things. I love you like a brother. Thanks for coming. We'll stay in touch. Hopefully, a little less time in between interviews.
For sure.
We'll make it happen.
Well, I'll make some notes on what happens over the next few weeks, and I'll make sure I cover everything the next time I'm back.
Yeah, that'd be great. Much appreciated. And kudos to you. You're doing phenomenal work. Appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Vince.
Okay. Bye.
Ciao for now. All right. Vince Gircys, former OPP, retired OPP officer. I like the guy. He's very cool-headed, very level. And I tend to like people like that. And yeah, always a good chat with Vince. And sorry, D Live, if you're, I'm sure you're there. I hope you're there. It's one of those things still where I can't have D Live running at the same time. So I know you're there. I just can't see your chat because it takes up, I don't know. But I'm still working on that issue too. We'll see if I can get a beefier computer to run everything that I want to run as smoothly as I want to run it. Yes, Tim, he was cop OPP, Ontario Provincial Police. I'm just reading a couple of the comments here. Yeah, so interesting. Another thing I forgot to mention earlier today, which really made me happy, and a long time coming. Where are you? There we are. Was the announcement from the Liberty Coalition Canada, which is coalition between Randy Hillier, Maxime Bernier, and Derek Sloan. And I love it. It's and a number of other folks too. I just don't know their names offhand. local politicians, mayors, and that sort of thing. Fantastic. That's exactly what's needed. You actually have the leader of the PPC and a member of the CPC coming together to form a coalition against lockdowns. And you have a provincial MPP and Randy Hillier and some local guys. Do me a favor, you guys. Take this website. I didn't put it in the description, but I'll put it in the chat. Forward this to your politician, whether it's a reeve of an RM or a mayor of a small town or an MLA, rural or urban, doesn't matter, or an MP. Send this to them, pressure them to support this and join this coalition. It's extremely important. Write down, even, if you think your reeve is only responsible for, 160 people or 500 people or 3,000 people. It doesn't matter. The more names part of this, the stronger it grows, the stronger it is, the more power they have to influence and to inspire other people, to show them that there are leaders in communities that are against this. They're against these lockdowns. They're against these restrictions. They're against the masking and all of these things. And there's a lot of communities I know out there right now that are not enforcing any of these. And they can do it because they have a small community and there's good communication between the people. And it's just not an issue. And so those people also need to sign on to this, and get the numbers up to show that there's a lot of leadership from all levels of government that are against what we're seeing. I think it's a great idea. I really hope there's a lot of politicians, again, from all levels that join this. Now, having said that, I'm trying to wrap my head around if there's any MLAs from any party in Saskatchewan that would step outside the party lines. And my guess is no. That's why it's so important for these mayors of small communities to get on this, and we can pressure them. And that's why it's important that we pressure them. An MLA, for example, in my riding, if 200 people wrote an email including this link and asking, what the hell are you doing? Why aren't you supporting this? The pressure's going to be on, the heat's going to be on, and they're going to have to answer to it, because ultimately at some point they will be held accountable. And so that's why I think this is really important, and it's a really good step in the right direction. Send your emails, make your phone calls to whoever your mayor is or your MLA or your MP. Everybody do it. Just do it and say, hey, get on this, support this. And this is why it's important, and put the pressure on them. Man, I'm telling you, it could have an effect. It could move the dial. So, and I noticed there's more people have already signed on. Let's have a look and see if they've updated anymore. Let's see, where are you? I guess you have to. I saw the list of people that were involved when I signed up, but I guess you have to sign up again to see that. And I signed up on my phone, so I'm not actually technically signed up using my computer. So maybe that's why I can't see that. Let's see. Let's just try clicking this and see what happens. Maybe they're at the bottom here. Yeah, there we go. So you got Randy, you got Maxime, you got Derek, Steve Van Leeuwen, counselor in Center Wellington, Derek Hurlick Township and county counselor, Paul Hinman, former MLA Calgary Glenmore. That's awesome. That's a new name I didn't notice before. So, and like I said, I signed up. I don't know if they're going to list me as a signatory because I'm not elected. I'm just the candidate of record for Saskatoon Grassroots, so I'm not sure that. But whatever, I support it 100% and think it's incredibly important piece to this puzzle. Yeah, so we can close that. So, Jason Kenney. I gotta find it. I didn't have it queued up, but I think I can find it fairly quickly if I remember who sent it to me. It might take me a second. I'm looking for the latest Jason Kenney. I think I might have found it. No. But it's the latest Kenney. I wouldn't call it a speech, but where he talks about the Great Reset and conspiracy theorists. And I wanted to play some of it. Hopefully I can do that. But if somebody has that link handy, if you could send it to me, that would be greatly appreciated. Whether it's on Facebook or Twitter Messenger, whatever. That would be greatly appreciated. Sorry, guys, I'm just still looking here. Let's see if there's anybody in the comments. Jason Kenney is pooched here in Alberta. What an arrogant bastard. Oh, God, he's so arrogant. That's why I want to bring up this video, because it's a pretty good one to tear him apart. So if anybody can find that link, I'm having trouble finding it. That would be helpful. Let's see if I can find it on Facebook here. Let's just do this. Maybe he even put it on his own page, given how arrogant he is. This might be it. Hang on.
For Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, to take your questions for about the message. I'm sorry to pause so much on this question, but throughout the last 10 months, a lot of folks have said, why aren't you promoting more? And the first actual suppliers.
Here, I'll just put it over.
I think
and we'll find it together, so you're not sitting there waiting for me to get my shit together.
We are facing a real problem, frankly, a crisis.
Oh, this is going to take forever doing it this way. So the problem is, for all you techies out there,
later in March, so we've got the capacity to administer them.
Okay, so I think we're figuring out the problem here, and I wondered about this before. So for you techies out there, Rio, maybe this is a good question for you. So I can run this video on my computer, no problem. As soon as I drag it over into my monitor, which is a TV, that's where everything stops. So me being a boomer tech, even though I'm not a boomer, I can't figure that out. But that's where I think the problem resides now. Yeah, thanks, Susan. That's an article about it, but I'm going to find the actual speaking point that he had. We'll see if we can do it here.
We just don't have the supply. That's why this term isolation center sounds a little bit scary.
Yeah, Badass Grandma, there was one definitely on December 7th, but there's a brand new fresh one. I think it was in this.
Right now would be called the UK variant or the B117 variant, which is some estimates 40 to 80% more contagious than
Oh, shut up, Kenny.
Community transmission.
More fear mongering.
Cases.
Check the DM I sent you. Now. Yeah, okay, I'll check.
Obviously, Calgary and Edmonton.
That might be quicker if we got that particular discussion. Thank you very much. There it is. No, that's not the same one. That's not the one I was looking for. I've talked about this one before. That's a different one.
Show up bigger in terms of absolute numbers. And I want to remind everybody, this isn't just about COVID. Every day, people have heart attacks.
Sorry, guys. We'll find it.
Within our population for the vaccination, and we'll release that probably. I'm getting.
Oh, Rio's yelling at me. Are you connected to your TV using HDMI? Yes, I am, Rio.
All MLAs have taken a 5%.
I can try that. I can try a different cable.
The pay for my job is down by 15%. And so Laura Anderson Lauren asks, when are you going to resume elective surgery? 1.2% of those who.
And just keep in mind that all of these little fireside chats with Kenny, they're all scripted. All these questions are I
tell you, I spend a lot of my time every day on
BS.
This issue. All right, Zorda Williams says, what happens if you refuse the vaccine?
We're not seeing it.
Let's be clear.
It's probably close to the end. He probably set that question and answer towards the end, I would guess.
Pages on Facebook and websites.
Yeah, here we go. That's it.
Using the pandemic crisis to advance.
He's such a douchebag.
Is, in my view, a slam dunk case of a claim for damages through NAFTA under the investor protection provisions. Look, we've got to work out the details on this with our partner, TC Energy.
It'll start right after this.
The legal advice that we have received, both from Canadian and U.S. counsel, is that we have a very strong case. There's no such thing as a slam dunk, but we believe we have a very strong case for damages, and we'll be continuing to work with TC Energy on that.
Okay, here we go.
Alice O'Regan says, are you working with Trudeau and Klaus Schwab on the Great Reset? No, Dallas.
So, like, they planned this question ahead of time. That this is in response to people like myself and others that understand the bigger picture and understand what's at play and can actually listen to people like Klaus Schwab. This isn't some theory. It's actually what they want to do, and they've told us they're going to use COVID as an opportunity to achieve these goals of the Great Reset and sustainable development. Mr. Kenny.
No, I'm not.
Look at that, just that fake laugh, like, oh, you people are ridiculous. Oh, just listen to me. Just listen to what I'm saying, because anything you find on the internet is bogus.
So I
oh God,
my political vision and values could hardly be more different than those of Klaus Schwab. For those of you who don't know, he is the head of the World Economic Forum, also known as the Davos Summit. He's the author of the Great Reset, and I'm not shy about the many differences and policy that I have with our Prime Minister. We try to work together constructively with the Government of Canada because that's what people expect of us, particularly through the pandemic. But we've got a number of active lawsuits against Mr. Trudeau's government where we believe they are invading our provincial jurisdiction and hurting Alberta's economic interests. We will continue to stand up strongly for Alberta's
blah, blah,
future,
blah.
for its economy, for its workers and people. And the Great Reset is a concept really of, quotes, using the pandemic crisis to advance what Klaus Schwab would call social democratic, or some people might call socialist ideas about redistribution, high levels of taxation, environmental policies with which I strongly disagree. We've been absolutely clear about that. And so, I think where the question is coming from is a view that any government that applies any kind of public health restrictions to limit viral spread during the pandemic is somehow part of a global conspiracy.
Well, Mr. Kenny, now would be a good time, right at that moment would be a good time to say, listen, my name is Jason Kenney. I was with the Conservative Party of Canada in 2015 when we signed the UN Sustainable Development Agenda, transforming our world. And it was our Prime Minister, Mr. Harper, that signed that. And it was an agreement that has been in place since 1992 that the former Prime Minister and former leader of the Conservative Party, Brian Mulroney, signed on. So, Mr. Kenny, if you're being honest, you would say then that, yes, I do support Klaus Schwab and the Great Reset, because the Great Reset is the UN Sustainable Development Agenda that we signed on to and set the table for Prime Minister Trudeau, the guy that you claim to be suing. And you would tell the people that Marxist communist agenda, and that's exactly what it is, it's socialist, what he's trying to denounce right now. Those two entities, the World Economic Forum and the UN, signed an agreement merging the Great Reset and Sustainable Development Agenda in June of 2019. If you were honest, Mr. Kenny, if you were honest, that's how you would say this. Instead of framing, as you're going to do in a minute, framing everybody that connects you to that agenda as conspiracy theorists. So let's listen what you actually do say versus what you should have said if you were telling the truth.
And folks, here's the reality. This is not a conspiracy. This is not a figment of my imagination. This is not invented.
No, Mr. Kenny. This is a piece of paper you're holding, and it is showing a graph that shows the cases have gone up. So our question that you nor any other politician wants to answer is, at this point right here, what did you start cycling the PCR at? Nobody will tell us, which of course naturally leads critical thinkers to wonder, because we understand that as soon as you ramp up the PCR CT, the cycle threshold, to anything over 35 or 33 or 30 or whatever it is, depending on who you talk to, definitely not over 35. If you do go over 35, you obtain mostly false positives. And that's why you see this rise that you're using to justify the measures. Now, you could, Mr. Kenny, you could very easily come to one of these little chats and just tell people, what are you cycling the PCR test at? what is the cycle threshold you're using to obtain these numbers? And so an interesting thing as a sidebar, and this is where I have to admit that I was wrong, but it's a good point in the discussion to do that. So Alberta came out with, and again, I'm only getting this information from a doctor that sent me an email citing these numbers. So I haven't actually seen anybody, heard anybody in Alberta cite these numbers. It just came to me in an email from somebody that I trust, somebody who has some credibility. Anyway, so the Alberta government said that 4% of their tests are false positive, right? Which is extremely low. Understanding, again, they didn't say how much their CT value is, which is extremely important for that 4% to mean anything. If you're only cycling at 20 or 25 CT and you got a 4% false positive rate, well, that's probably reasonable under those conditions. But are you getting that 4% at over 35? You're not. And we have peer-reviewed science that shows that that's impossible. The cycle threshold over 35 is 97%. Well, why don't we just look at it? So when people say I'm full of shit, I can just use this. So in this report, and this is the Corman-Drosten Review report, and it was put together and it's been peer reviewed by all of these folks who they're all listed at the bottom of this report, if anyone cares to go and check up on any of these people. But in this, it's very clear, very easy to understand. The number of application cycles less than 35, preferably 25 to 30 cycles. In case of virus detection, greater than 35 cycles only detects signals which do not correlate with infectious virus, as determined by isolation in cell culture. And that's a whole nother discussion we can have about the isolation. Anyway, if someone is tested by PCR as positive, when a threshold of 35 cycles or higher is used, as is the case in most laboratories in Europe and the US, the probability that said person is actually infected is less than 3%. The probability that said result is a false positive is 97%. And if you go down in the report, it gets a little bit more in depth. I'm not going to go through it all. That you guys can do that on your own. Point number 3 here. I think it's there. It should be noted that maybe I will, because there's not too much in point number 3. Oh, maybe there is. Not too bad. It should be noted that there is no mention anywhere in the Corman-Drosten paper of a test being positive or negative, or indeed what defines a positive or negative result. These types of virological diagnostic tests must be based on a SOP, including a validated and fixed number of PCR cycles, CT value, after which a sample is deemed positive or negative. The maximum reasonably reliable CT value is 30 cycles. Above CT of 35 cycles rapidly increases the number of false positives. Must be expected. And that echoes what the World Health Organization came out with that I mentioned earlier on January 20th in their notice, and that many other diagnostic techniques need to be used to truly identify a positive case. And nobody, to my knowledge, has done any of that. They just run people through a test, jab a thing up their nose, and send them on their way. So anyways, that's that. I recommend you guys check that out. I'm not going to go through any more of it, but it's an incredibly important report. So when Kenny brings out his little prop here, his little piece of paper, because, everybody he's talking to is a moron, and we're all idiots, and we're just slaves. So listen to what Kenny says, because what Kenny says is the truth. And I'm not going to say for sure because I don't know, but I'm going to assume, based on what I do know and the information I have received, that they have been cycling well over 35 in Alberta, and the chances are very good that all of these positives that he's using to scare everybody was derived from a BS PCR test, and that's just facts. It doesn't fit Kenny's narrative, but it is what it is. So I would prefer if Kenny came out and actually told us what CT value they're testing. And the interesting thing is they can change it at any location. So they can manipulate the number of cases, they can manipulate the number of deaths by simply putting out a notice to certain test sites or laboratories that are doing them. Yeah, you know what? Run this one now at 25, which, as I mentioned earlier, and again, I don't know because I can't confirm it, but it would make sense. That's exactly what North Dakota did. They took the WHO notice on January 20th when they had 12,000 cases, and they changed their testing to fit what the World Health Organization said they should do because of the problems we just identified. And lo and behold, look at that. 10 days later, they're down to 1,000 cases. Imagine that. Imagine that. But the problem is, now that we know this, they'll never admit it. They will absolutely never admit it, because if they did, they'd be held accountable for the last 10 months that all of us have been screaming at them. You're doing this wrong. The numbers aren't actual. And they'd be in a world of shit. So they will back out of this, is my guess, until they can instill enough fear in a population with the next one, is my guess. Anyways, let's carry on and listen to more of this nonsense.
By Klaus Schwab or Justin Trudeau or any conspiracy theory. This is the growth in hospitalizations.
Anytime you hear a politician use or utter the words conspiracy theory, it is to dismiss and degrade and to ridicule and to shame anybody that has a critical mind, that thinks and identifies exactly what we just identified and came to our conclusion over. That's why they do it.
From 100 to 950 between the end of October and the end of December. That was driven by a doubling of cases every 14 days. And if it had continued, we would have ended up with, we peaked out, I think, Doctor, at around 2,300 active or new.
Mr. Kenny, when you dismiss people like me and so many others that this is just conspiracy theory, do you not have an ounce of decency to understand why people like me and many others think this? When you have Klaus Schwab and you have every UN official since 92 telling us that this is their plan, telling us that they have to destroy the industrialized world, it's either you think we're stupid or you are part of it. And this is all theater. This is all sociopathic behavior. It's one or the other. It's not anything else. You're either a moron, and being in the positions that you've been in, somehow you are completely unaware of everything that we are aware of to draw the conclusion that we draw. when the UN for many years has said, they've been quoted, these people, these globalists, these elite, telling us that we got to destroy the Western world. We got to destroy the industrialized world. We got to destroy the free market and reimagine the economy and bring in socialism. Of course, we're going to think that. When you don't say that and acknowledge those facts, we're left to think you're either a moron or you're doing it on purpose, or you're purposely misleading the people you were hired to represent. One of two options.
2 cases per day. If you're doubling every 14 days, that would have very quickly become.
And again, if he was honest, if he was truly representing the people, he would say, this is the cycle threshold we've been using to achieve these numbers, to derive these numbers. And we're cycling at over 35, where science has told us that if you're cycling over 35, chances are pretty good, up to 97%, they're going to be a bunch of false positives in those numbers. So anyways, so that reminds me, I have to make a correction. I don't think I talked about it on a live stream, but I did post it, and I have to clarify. So it took a while to get it, because it's a little bit the way it's presented. You can easily, think the way I thought, and many people did, and not too many people caught on to it. It was actually a guy on Twitter that I was arguing with that forced me to actually think a little further in this equation. So the equation that was sent to me was 4% is what Alberta says is their false positive rate, right? They acknowledge that. Now, there was 1.7 million people in Alberta tested. 4% false positive. 120,000 were positive. So if it's 4%, now the equation, the way it was presented to me is the 4% was applied to the 1.7 million, which equals 68,000. 68,000 of 120,000 positives is more than 50%, which, when I look back and I think about it, that doesn't make sense to me, because the false positive rate over 35 is like 97%. So even at 50-some% of the false positives, that's or of the people tested, it seems very low. So it didn't seem accurate to me. But at any rate, that 4% should be applied to the 120 positives, because the only way you can achieve a false positive is by first having a positive. So that equation doesn't work in the sense that it was relayed to me and that I then used. So it was a little misleading, and so there's a post I had to take it down simply because I was wrong. But it can be a little confusing, so whatever, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, the guy that I was arguing with on Twitter, I thanked him for pushing me to think outside the box that I had made for myself. And then what it did actually do is then reestablish the position based on the science that I've already been made aware of, that over 35 cycles, you're going to have 97% false positives. Now, that all being cleared up, I want to know, and the question is, of course, to Alberta Health, and maybe somebody watching from Alberta can send a message to AHS or somebody and ask them how they achieved or got to that 4%. What did they do? What are they cycling at to achieve a 4% false positive rate? And how can they promote that when the science tells us that if you're cycling over 35, blah, blah, blah. So if somebody wants to do that, that'd be great, because I'd love to hear, because that's what they're promoting, is that it's 4%. So 4% of the 120,000 positives is about 4,800 bucks or 4,800 people. So, but again, it doesn't line up with what we know to be true about the PCR. So, interesting discussion. Interesting. So again, that was that. So if anybody has taken my post and used it as an argument, you may want to retract and blame it on me because I'm the one who promoted it. But those numbers were wrong or calculated in the wrong way. Anyway, so let's carry on, Mr. Kenny. You see how that's done, Mr. Kenny? When you're wrong, you actually tell people that you were wrong, and it's okay because we're human. We can make mistakes. You don't just tell everybody they're an idiot and they're a moron because they think a certain way based on the information that we all have. See how that's done? See, but when you're honest, you can do that. When you lie like you people do, it's very hard because if you admit to one, then all of the other lies that one stacked up under or over falls with it. So that's sort of how it works.
5,000 a day, then the 5,000 becomes 10,000 a day. That is not a conspiracy. It is not politics. It's not a preference. It's not fake news. It's cold, hard numbers. If you don't believe the numbers, let's say you spend all of your time on conspiracy theory pages on Facebook and websites. If you don't believe the numbers, then believe the people in the hospitals, believe the ICU nurses, believe the physicians, because
who are all paid by you, who can't speak out with an opposing view, or they lose their job or they lose their license. So that's a problem. So you're expecting us to listen to the people who are paid by you, supported by unions who are all on board with this plan because they're all socialist and they're all there for the bigger agenda. We all know what unions are. We all know what they aim to. It's all about the collective. So you're expecting us to listen to those people when I can talk to people I know who work in these hospitals who tell me it's not what they're saying in the media. But then again, of course, that makes me a conspiracy theorist.
And believe the bereaved of those nearly 1,700
See how they pull on the heartstrings? You see how they shame you into, I mean, if you at all denounce what we're doing, you have no heart because all these people are dying. Yeah, people are dying, and that's sad. I just gave condolences to a family yesterday that lost a loved one. I don't know how they died, but it's sad. It's a terrible thing. Nobody likes to lose anyone. Doesn't matter what age they are. But people die, and people have died from the flu as long as I've been around, because the flu puts them in a more weakened position and they can't deal with the existing issues they have, whatever those issues are. So yes, the flu has contributed to the deaths of millions and will continue to contribute to the deaths of millions. Just like Corona, just like whatever this is, contributes to the death of people who are compromised, people who are vulnerable. And that's the reality. Are you going to destroy everyone's lives, everyone's livelihoods, everyone's businesses, everyone's childhood? Because this is such a horrible pandemic that it has a 99.9% recovery rate? Seriously? But you just keep doing that. You just keep doing that, Mr. Kenny.
Albertans whose lives are lost to this disease despite extraordinary measures to control it over the past year. So, no, this is not Klaus Schwab's doing. This is the virus's doing. This is the epidemiological reality with which we are contending. If we had not taken measures in November and December, those 2,400 daily cases, as I say, would have gone to 5,000, would have gone to 10,000. And about 4.5% of those.
Thanks, Tim. Yes. What I was saying is, you see how these guys operate. It's all about defending the job they're doing. It's all about perception. It's all about saving their ass. And it's not about doing the right thing. Again, if it was about doing the right thing, you would put it all into context. You would tell us all openly what CT value you've been using. You would admit that just testing people by ramming a Q-tip down their nose is not enough. That you actually have to do 5 other diagnostic practices to determine if somebody really does have COVID or a flu or whatever. And you're not doing that, and you haven't done it, and you probably won't do it. You're simply relying on one diagnostic tool that has been proven to be unreliable, and that's a sham. And more people are getting it. More people understand it, and you're going to be held to account. And lawsuits will be flying, my friend. And your political career, I can see the dissipation light blinking now for most of you, all of you, because none of you have had any balls to actually tell the truth, because for whatever reason, either you're a moron, like I said, or you're fully committed to the Great Reset and Sustainable Development Agenda, which is using COVID to bring in this agenda. And you know that, but you're lying. And you're trying to degrade and dismiss and ridicule and shame anybody who understands this.
Would have ended up in hospitals. The 950 in hospital here.
Yeah, here. Look at here.
Christmas,
look here. Look at this orange graph here.
With doubling.
It's very scary. Very scary.
2,000, and those 2,000 would have become 4,000.
Right. Very scary.
Total, and we have like 8,000 hospital beds in the province. We obviously have to have a bunch of those for cancer patients, moms having babies, emergency surgery. So you can't clear out all 8,000. We define as basically our maximum hospital capacity for COVID.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't need to listen anymore of Kenny. I made my point. But that's what they do. And it's important that we call them on it as much as we possibly can. Of course, somebody's going to, more than somebody, a number of people will probably react to this video and be angry because I made Kenny, I called him a moron and which I didn't. I actually said he's either a moron or he's complicit. But whatever. But they never answer. They never answer any of these questions. I'm still waiting for Scott Moe. After he invited me to email him, I'm still waiting for a response. So what are you going to do? Speaking of that, somebody did receive a response. I just have to find that real quick. I should be able to find it pretty quick here. Hang on. Yeah, here it is. I'm not going to, well, maybe I will. We'll see. Hang on, guys. I just want to make sure I keep people's privacy intact. So I'll just scroll up one little bit. You'll just have to trust me that this was in fact written by somebody within the government of Saskatchewan, Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, Seniors, and Rural and Remote Health. All right. It should be good, I guess. Honorable Randy Weeks, MLA for Bigger Sask Valley, has forwarded me your emails regarding services at the Bigger Hospital and mandatory mask requirements. I apologize for the delay in responding. Major focus for our government and the health system has been addressing matters related to COVID-19 pandemic. I appreciate being informed of your views without changes to services. So what's happening is they're closing down hotels. They're closing down hospitals in the middle of a pandemic. Which seems odd, but our government is committed to providing all Saskatchewan residents, including those in rural and remote communities, with timely access to emergency medical services. All services at Bigger and District Health have resumed after being converted to an alternate level care site as part of the response to COVID-19. SHA has indicated its intention to fully reopen the Wilkie and District Health Center when it is in a position to safely do so. So it seems they've closed down this one too. Provincial health order requiring that staff in long-term care work only in long-term care facilities. Blah, blah, blah. There's another point to this. Emergency services may also be available at Bigger Health and COVID-19 significant. There was something about masks here. Government may extract. Sorry. While the province continues to recommend wearing masks whenever you are outside the home, wearing a non-medical mask has been required in all indoor public spaces in Saskatchewan since November 19th, 2020. Non-medical masks do not replace the need to practice proven health measures such as staying home when sick, physical distancing, and washing hands, and covering coughs and sneezes. Guidelines for cloth masks used by the public are found at this website. Blah, blah, blah. But this is an example of somebody on behalf of Randy Weeks, and credit where credit's due. It's an example of somebody that responded to a constituent's email that mentioned the two issues that this individual had concerns about. Now, you can agree or disagree with what they're saying, but at the very least, at least this person received a response in a 2 or 3 page letter and outlining the position and why the position. So I find it interesting after Scott Moe publicly invited me and anybody else to send him an email identifying our concerns, which I did, which everybody has had an opportunity to see because I made it an open letter, and hasn't responded, not even the courtesy of a acknowledgement that, yes, we've got your email and the response will be forthcoming. Nothing. Silence. And that's what's frustrating. That's one of the things that's frustrating. and creates anger and frustration in the population, because we have valid questions. We have science that backs up our concerns, that feeds our concerns. Most of us aren't scientists. Most of us aren't doctors. Most of us aren't experts. We rely on other experts. We rely on virologists and immunologists and specialists and experts and doctors to give us the information that the government isn't giving us. And the government doesn't tell us how they're justifying these. So, of course, we get frustrated. And of course, we get angry when we're treated like mushrooms, kept in the dark and fed bullshit. So we're going to continue to do what we're going to do until you open the debate, till you open the discussion, till you accept some of the things that we're talking about that are coming from the experts. And until you do, we'll just carry on. We'll keep doing what we're doing, because you're destroying economies, you're destroying livelihoods, you're destroying lives, you're destroying childhoods, you're destroying an enormous percentage of the population. And I was just thinking about the media while I'm saying that, because the media is just as complicit. So I want to really, just before, I think this is probably the last thing I share tonight. So my good friend and called into the radio station, and we'll call him Kevin, and that's fine. He called into the Gormley show today, and I thought it was a fantastic discussion, because it shows you just how bad they are when they get called, and how it's okay for them to cut you off, but God forbid you cut them off. I thought it was very well done. This is Mike Kuros, I think, was filling in for Gormley. So I'm just going to play this. Fantastic. Thanks very much, Kevin. Kevin watches my show religiously with his wife. So good to see you guys. Well done, Kevin. So I wanted to play this for you guys because it's awesome.
Right now, we've got lots of texts. It is Bugs Day, the hour of rage, where you talk about whatever's bugging you, and a lot of people out there are bugged this morning. I'm Mike Kuros, filling in for John Gormley on 980 CJME and 650 CKOM.
Don't let it bug you, man. Like it, we can't all be perfect.
What a dumb thing to do.
It's green, moron. Who's the stupid guy? Hello?
Good morning, I'm Mike Kuros, filling in for John on Bugs Day, the hour of rage. We've got lots of callers, lots of texts. Let's go right to the calls. Kevin in Saskatoon, you think that lockdowns are too restrictive?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. I mean, I don't understand, Mike. You made a comment to the last previous caller before the other Kevin. I forget the gentleman's name, but I thought he made some very good points. And you said that, I think I'm paraphrasing you, I might be quoting you exactly here. We know that if we reduce the restrictions, there will be an increase in deaths.
That's right.
And you stressed that. What study are you basing that on, Mike?
What study are you basing all your research on?
Hey, no, back it up. You're making a public statement as a media representative going,
hey, man, I'm an opinion guy. I'm an opinion guy on the radio.
Well,
and the reality is this.
That's what it is.
The reality is this.
I'm an opinion guy on the radio, so then, therefore, I am not held to any standard, and I don't have to justify anything that I say on the radio. Whereas you, Mr. Caller, I'm going to flip it back and get you to tell me where you get your information from. It's amazing. It's amazing that it just expects that he can say whatever he wants. He doesn't have to back any of it up because he is just an opinion guy on the radio. But callers are held to a different standard. They have to come with all of their backing sources. It's just hilarious.
Hold on, Kevin. Hold on. If there's no restrictions at all, none at all, you don't think that COVID-19 cases would increase?
Well, let me throw this one out.
I gotta have a study to tell you that.
Mike, let's have this debate. 56 cases of influenza A and B.
Sorry, I just had a call there. Hang on. Sean Taylor. I'm live at the moment.
Oh. Sorry. I just driving home from work fighting the massive global pandemic.
All right. Well, give me a text when you get home. Maybe I'll bring you on if I'm still on.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
I'll be 40 minutes.
Oh, you'll be that long? Oh, I won't. I've already been on for 2 hours and 10 minutes. So let's do it at maybe tomorrow night before or after Salim.
Okay.
Cool, man.
All right, I'll call you when I get home.
Yep. Bye. All right. Let's carry on.
In Canada, as reported by CTV on the National this weekend.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think? Okay, well, hold on a second, Kevin. Kevin,
hear me out, Mike.
No, hold on, Kevin.
No, you can't have both ways, Mike.
Kevin, hold on a second. I got the mute button. Kevin, I'm going to ask you a question. Why are there only 56 cases in Canada right now?
Okay, let's discuss both sides of that, Mike, because I'm glad you asked that so important question. Here's the deal. CTV represented the story by saying that it was because everybody's social distancing and wearing masks. But what's the converse argument to that? What is it, Mike? You know the answer.
No, you tell me, Kevin.
Well, let me tell you. The PCR test, which nobody, including your radio station, is not looking into the faults of the PCR test, the cycling that's being done at 40 plus cycles in this province alone. Nobody's asking those hard questions of the Premier, of the doctor, Shahid Shahab. Nobody's asking those questions. If the PCR test now becomes fallible, where did all the influenza cases go? And look at the study that was done in Ireland, where they took 50, and this is not on your radio station or anywhere in Canadian National News. 1,500 cases were studied that were designated as COVID-19, and when they re-examined those 1,500 cases, they were all of them, 100% of them were found to be influenza.
Okay, and where are you getting this information from, Kevin? Is it on the internet?
You need to start looking up and
okay, well, hold on a second, Kevin.
Come on, Mike.
No, hold on, Kevin. The reality is, for every study out there that said COVID-19 is not a problem, there's another study that says it is an actual problem. Now, hold on a second, Kevin. No, Kevin. You listen to me now.
No, so, you listen to me now.
Can you listen to me? No, you're not going to talk over me now. It's my turn. For every COVID-19 examination that says this is a problem, you can find one on the internet that says it's not a problem. For everyone that says it's lockdown, Kevin, okay, buddy. I can't do it, Kevin. Kevin, I can't do it, man. If you keep on talking over me, you're going to get cut off. So here's the deal. If all we did was report everything we saw on COVID, right? This station would be full of everybody saying everything about everything. We wouldn't get to the bottom. It is best practices and it is best guessing in terms of what people are trying to do. This is new to pretty much everybody.
Best guessing. This is best guessing. We're going to destroy the economy. We're going to destroy people's lives and livelihoods, jobs and businesses by best guessing. When we can offer you a evidenced path to open the province, to get kids back to school properly, to get them back in their sports, to get jobs back in line, to get businesses back to open, etc., etc., etc. We have the path for you. You don't have to guess anymore. There's plenty of tests, there's plenty of evidence, there's plenty of experts that tell you we're doing this wrong. We're handling this very wrong. We've been saying it for 9 months. It's just that the media doesn't listen to people like Kevin when they call in and identify these things and chalk them up as conspiracy theorists. It's not that they don't get it, they don't understand. Of course they know it. They just don't want to. And more people start doing this, more and more pressure is going to be put on. And we have to continue. I think that's pretty much about it.
They're trying to do the best they damn can. The reason probably why there are only 56 cases of influenza is because the entire country is locked down. Kevin, I appreciate your passion. Okay, let's go to Wayne and
I appreciate your passion, but you're only going to be allowed to talk when I tell you you can talk. I can step all over you, but you can't step all over me because I have the mute button and it's my show. He's moving into the Gormley mode quite well. I say bring back Drew Remenda. Drew let people talk. They're best guessing, and doing the best they damn can. Okay, well, that's not good enough. It's just, but this is what we're dealing with, and we have to expose it, and we have to criticize it, and we have to denounce it, and we have to bring it forward, and we have to talk about it. I've actually considered doing a separate show. It would take. I'm so busy; it would be hard to do. But taking every one of these shows and taking out bits and parts, and then criticizing it during the evening, as we do here. We'll see if I can put something like that together. I would need somebody to help me to record particular points and conversations, and then offer an opinion. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes down the road. But anyway, I just wanted to run that by you because I thought it was quite good on Kevin's part, and then it just sort of went off the rails. That was 6:50. That was Mike Kouros in for John Gormley. Kelly. Yeah. So, what is Sask PCR cycle rate? Gal asked. 36 from the paper before. The only information I've received was an email sent from the Saskatchewan Health Authority to a individual that is in contact with me, and at that point it was 40. It was a 40 CT. I don't know if they've adjusted it. I'm going to guess that they have because our numbers are starting to decline. But I don't know. They won't tell us. So. Let's see. These politicians are not working for the people. Stiff bricks going where they're shoved. Yeah. Vegreville 45. Yeah, see, it's just insane. Kyle says it's seasonality, not cycles lowering. Yeah, within the flu, if that's what it is, that's probably also part of the picture that we have to consider. I'll take that. I'm just looking at Harvey's comment. I don't know what that's in relation to, so I can't comment on it. I think that apparently has all the cycling from Labs Across Canada. I'll find it and put it in the comments tonight, or send it to your Facebook. Yeah, do that, please. I had it before, but I can't find it, so that would be good if you could send that to me. It'd be great. Anyways, guys, that's 2 hours and 15 minutes. I'm going to shut her down for the night. But again, 1 o'clock, SaskTel Center parking lot is where we're meeting for the convoy. And it's we're hoping to get people from all over the province. I know there's folks from Regina coming up. So if you live closer than Regina, you have no excuse. It's not going to be outside. Well, I guess part of it is. The speeches at Vimy will be. But the convoy itself, be part of it. Get your flags. Put your signs up. Do it safely. You know, you don't want to expose yourself to tickets or safety issues. But get your signs and flags, and let's come together. Let's have an impact. Let's move the dial a little bit. Let's show the government, but more importantly, let's show the people of Saskatchewan that there's a large contingent of people that have some serious concerns with what's going on. And that's the time to do it. Convoy for kids. Hashtag convoy for kids. We want to get our kids back to normal. We want to get our kids living life. And in life, there's risk. And we all understand that. But the risk is very low. For kids, pretty much non-existent. So what are we doing? Let's get them back doing what they're supposed to be doing, playing hockey, playing sports, attending school without a mask. They're far more important than all of this other nonsense. So let's do it. Let's get together. We'll see you there at 1 o'clock. I'm on again tomorrow night with Salim Mansour. We'll have a riveting conversation, I know. And looks like Sean Taylor will probably join us tomorrow evening, hopefully. And that's always good, too. I like my buddy Sean. Anyways, that's it for tonight, guys. Have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow night. Ciao for now. And remember, globalism bad, nationalism good. Ciao.